There we go. Hello, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this information session about the Venturous Playwright Fellowship here at Playwright Center. My name is Julia Brown. I use she, her pronouns. I'm the Artistic Programs Manager here at Playwright Center, which means that I kind of help facilitate the logistical side of our fellowship programs, including the application and selection process. I'm also joined by our artistic director.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm Nicole, and I'm the new artistic director. I've been here about 6 months. And I so enjoy working with Julia, and I'm excited that you're all here today.
Fabulous. So a little overview of what we'll be talking about today. We'll be talking about the sort of purpose and history, a little bit of history of the program, the intention, the benefits involved, eligibility, and particularly guidelines for partner theaters. And then I'm going to take you through the web page where you can find all of the information, and then take you through first the application on the theater side and then the application on the playwright side. This is our second cycle of selecting Venturous Fellows, and this is the first cycle that we're kind of using a slightly different platform. So I will just state that and ask for a little bit of grace, as there may be some things that I don't do quite as smoothly as I normally would do in an info session, because this is our first time using this process. So the first thing I'm going to do is share my screen so that as we're talking about the program, you can see where to find this information. And if you look here, we are at venturoustheaterfellowship.org. This is the link that you've all received, whether you're a nominated playwright or a theater who is interested in a potential co-application. And this is kind of the central page that has all of the information. So the first thing I'm going to show you, in case you haven't taken a look at this, is where to actually find the list of nominated plays. So if you click this drop down, you'll see Request Access. If you haven't yet, this is where you can put your information in to request the password that will show you the whole list of nominated plays.
Okay.
Just a quick note that if you're not asking a question, if you wouldn't mind muting, because we're getting a little bit of background noise. But if you do have a question at any time, please feel free to raise a hand, unmute, use the chat, whatever makes sense for you. Thank you so much. So if you enter all this information, it will send an email to me, and then I will send you the password to view the whole list and all of the details. It is not automated, just so you know, so it may take a little bit. I need to check my email and send it to you, so it won't be an instantaneous thing. Once you have your password, you'll be able to go back to this drop down and click the Venturous Play list. And here you'll see the entire list, every play in order by play title, in alphabetical order. You'll see the title, the playwright, a quote from the person who nominated that play for this list. All of the nominees are other playwrights. A little synopsis of the play that was provided by the playwright, as well as a bio. If there is upcoming development of the piece, like a chance to see a reading or a workshop, as you can see here, there will be a note about that. And then beside each play, there is a link here to the PDF of the script itself. This is why we keep this page behind a password, because we don't just want in-progress drafts floating all around the internet for everybody to see. There's also here a contact, either for the writer themselves or for their agent or manager, whoever they chose to kind of be the main primary contact. So you'll be able to click there and email them directly if you're interested in talking about a potential co-application. So just a quick preview of what the list actually looks like. I know that many of you have already started looking. If you have any questions about a particular piece or need help with getting in contact, either a playwright getting in touch with a theater or vice versa, please feel free to reach out to myself or to Perone Yusufzadeh. Perone is the director of this program, but unfortunately has a sick kid today and so can't join us at the moment. But Perone is available for conversation and questions going forward if you need her. So now that we have the list, and let's say you have found a great partnership either between a playwright in one theater, a playwright in multiple theaters, and you've decided you're going to go ahead and apply together. This is where you'll find the information. So you'll go back to this main Venturous Playwright Fellowship page and scroll down. You'll see this is a video of last year's information session. We'll replace that with this very video in just a few days. We will also have another info session in January. So if you have colleagues that couldn't make it and want to join then, or if you wanted to come back and have new questions, more than welcome to join then as well. So talking a little bit about what the program is. So this is a program that used to live at the Lark Play Development Center, RIP. And when they closed operations, we sort of inherited the program in the middle of a term. So we had a group of fellows who spent their first year with the Lark and their second year with us. At the end of that year, we essentially redesigned the entire program, including the guidelines, how the application works, the benefits and things like that. So that was initially launched back in summer, fall of 2022. And so our first full year group of fellows started in summer of 2023, and they are with us until the end of this upcoming June. And that's Harmon Ott, LM Feldman, and Jessica Huang. The Venturous Theater Fund is a fund of the Tides Foundation, and they specifically, one of their main concerns and focuses is getting plays into production, not only keeping in the workshop mode or the reading mode, but really how do we make it possible for plays to actually get up in front of audiences nationwide. So they have a series of other programs, including capital grants, which is something I highly recommend taking a look at. Whether or not you choose to apply for our particular fellowship, do take a look at Venturous Theater Fund in general, because you may find other opportunities that you're eligible to apply for as well. And I'm always a fan of saying apply for everything you possibly can all the time, especially if the application is free, because you never know what might come out for you. So this program is specifically about supporting a specific play and moving that play into production. And it's focusing on plays that, for whatever reason, perhaps don't get programmed. And don't get programmed for reasons of venturousness, as we say. So this is defined here, something that's formally adventurous. It's epic in scope, whether that's ideas, plot, length, cast size, tech needs, that can mean a lot of different things, and full of bold ideas. Sometimes people define it as difficult to produce, which, has kind of a little bit of baggage around it as a phrase, but sometimes this is somebody that is writing a piece that has full of impossible stage directions. Sometimes it's something that really challenges sort of an accepted way of thinking. Sometimes it has really specific casting that is not something that every theater is able to do accurately without some extra support. The theaters themselves that we are looking for are people who are committed to this type of work, committed to new work, and willing to sort of go the full venturous mile and not to produce a scaled down or a sort of dampened down version of the play. We hope that a theater is excited to kind of have this ability to produce a play like this and to work in partnership with a theater to do that. And that this is an artist-centered process and not a transactional one or one that's solely based on product. Something we're looking for theaters and playwrights who have an interest in process and kind of developing together. A little bit about how the benefits of this program. So there are benefits for the playwright that is selected, and then there is a benefit for the theater or theaters who are selected. We will have 4 fellows that are selected in this round. Fellows receive $60,000 over 2 years, so $30,000 per year, along with a considerable amount of development funds and travel funds. So each year, you will essentially have a pot of money to develop a piece. You do not need to develop your nominated play both years. You will need to do some work on it during one of the years, but that all depends on when your production is scheduled for. And then there's also some funds set aside to either come and engage with your colleagues here at the Playwright Center another time, perhaps go to see a premiere of one of your cohort's plays, or kind of some other way to engage as a cohort of fellows. Because generally, there's not a residency requirement here. People don't move to Minnesota for this opportunity. So people are coming and going, and you're not always in space with your fellow fellows. So we like to kind of make it possible to spend a little bit of time together in whatever way works with the schedule. Now, on the theater side, the big benefit is that you are eligible for a production subsidy of up to $75,000 for the premiere production of the play. And it says up to because you'll see later in some guidelines that there are some rules about sort of how much of the budget the subsidy can take up versus what the theater funds itself. And it says eligible for because technically the production subsidy is made as there's a proposal made to the fund itself and to the foundation, and they need to approve that. There's really no reason for it not to be approved, but we kind of make the language a little bit more precise there because it's not simply, we're going to cut you a check and hand it to you on July 1st, if that makes sense. Now, if there's a group of theaters applying together to either co-produce a play or do kind of a rolling model or something like that, that will be something that you'll talk with Venturous about on how you want to split up those funds. If it's, split evenly, if it's all going to the theater that's doing the first production, kind of whatever works for you, that's something that you'll work out with them. And then directly with the theater fund, they will figure out how that's getting paid out and everything like that. The name of the foundation, so it's the Venturous Theater Fund of the Tides Foundation. So tides as in ocean or laundry. We are accepting one application per play, and theaters can apply once. So whether you're applying in partnership with other theaters or just one theater with a playwright, basically everyone can be working on one application. Only the nominated plays are eligible. There may be a playwright on this list who you're super excited about and you love a different play of theirs. Absolutely, produce that play. That is phenomenal. But in order to be eligible to get this support and to get this fellowship, it does need to be the specific play that was nominated by a peer playwright. A couple of other guidelines to talk about for the theaters themselves is you are committing to the world premiere production. So there is not a version of this where a theater and playwright receive the fellowship and then the theater says, actually, no, we're not going to produce this. You are going to be signing some papers when you get to that point that says, yes, we're committing to this production. That will be what allows the production subsidy to go through. The play needs to open within 3 years of the fellowship announcement. So the fellowship begins July 1st, 2025. And so you have between that date and the end of June 2028 for the opening to happen. If the play opens in June of 2028 and runs, past the end of that month, that's totally fine as long as the actual opening happens within that 3-year period. Productions must run for at least 16 performances and have an official press opening. You'll see some more details here. I won't read it all word for word, but I do definitely recommend looking at this carefully in terms of requirements for the playwright's residency, royalty and compensation. I'm going to highlight this point particularly. You'll remember that I said that selected theaters are eligible for up to $75,000. And that is because the subsidy cannot exceed 50% of the total production budget. So if your theater has the capacity to put up 50,000 for the production, then the production subsidy would be 50,000, if that makes sense. If the theater is putting up 75,000 or more, then the production subsidy can be the full 75,000. So a budget size is not going to determine whether or not you receive the fellowship, if that makes sense. If you're saying, this is the budget that I have, we are putting up 50, and so we're going to ask for 50,000 in the subsidy, that is absolutely fine. But it's just so that you know you can't put up 10 and then get 75,000 for a total 85,000 for the budget. If there's any questions about that, if that is unclear or you need some help mathing stuff out, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to talk through a specific situation and also bring questions directly to the Venturous Fund if need be. But that's just an important thing to think about as you're planning kind of how you would approach. It's important to the Venturous Theater Fund that the theater also kind of has skin in the game, and that it is a partnership in terms of this world premiere production. Co-productions, as I said, are permitted as long as all the producing partners are eligible. Theaters must be based in the United States, and including all co-producing partners need to be based in the United States. Must be 501c3 organizations or operate under a fiscal sponsorship of a 501c3. And then it must have some kind of agreement with Actors Equity that allows a minimum of 2 AEA actor contracts for the world premiere. That doesn't necessarily mean you need to have a sort of permanent full equity agreement, but you need to have whatever kind of special agreement allows you to hire at least 2 equity actors for the piece. Quick question. If we apply with another theater as a co-pro, does that theater need to have been invited to apply? Nope. Theaters do not need to be nominated. Theaters do not need to be invited. There's a long list of theaters that I sent the information to because I had the contact information for about 618 theaters. I'm sure there are plenty of theaters and organizations in the US that I do not know about. So if you know those theaters and you want to work with them or propose a project with them, absolutely any theater who fits all of these guidelines that we just ran through is eligible to apply. Quick question. If Playwright is a member of a theater collective that is a co-applicant, all of the nominated plays are written by an individual playwright. So we do not have co-written nominated plays. There may be people who are attached with to a production. For example, I've developed this piece and have an agreement with this director that they will be directing the world premiere. That would be something to work out amongst yourselves. But in that case, it is not a co-written play, and it's not a application or a fellowship that's split between 2 people. Each of these fellowships is for one individual playwright.
Right, could I really quickly just add
Yeah.
some clarification for that? So the question about the co-applicant is the theater organization that would be
Correct.
co-applying for the grant. So I was just wondering if that is permissible. If it's because like the playwright is like a member of this collective, but and then like the organization that would be like producing the play, would be so I'm just concerned if like the panel might have questions about like, oh, like, self-dealing or, what
Oh, gotcha.
independence
So
of the artistic decisions, that kind of thing.
gotcha. So the question is more about like a pre-existing relationship between the playwright and the theater that they're applying with?
Exactly.
There is not an issue with that. I think that's absolutely fine. There is nothing in the rules or guidelines that says this needs to be a brand new collaboration. You certainly can have produced their work in the past if you would like. And as we get into the application, we'll kind of see what we're asking you to provide and ways you can talk about it as why this specific play. I would say probably when you make that application, you'll see we ask for some statements about the match between the theater and the playwright. So talking about previous collaborative relationship, I think would make a lot of sense there, but also why this specific play. So you're not saying, well, I always do Joe Schmo's plays, so obviously we'll do this one, kind of why this specific play will be an important thing to share. Does that kind of help answer that question? Awesome. Thank you so much. Moving into the timeline and how this all works. So this summer, we reached out to a group of a little over 50 playwrights, including folks who were finalists for this fellowship the last cycle, and asked them to nominate plays by their colleagues, by their peers in the field, that fit the criteria of a Venturous play that we laid out kind of earlier in this webpage. After that point, we got in touch with those writers, invited them, would you like to be a nominee? Would you like to be on this list? Those who said yes, created that list. And then we reached out to theaters. Again, we reached out to a good number of theaters, but certainly not every single theater that's ever existed. So I do recommend helping to spread the word if you have folks that you want to make sure are aware of this program. So now we are in the stage that we sometimes call like matchmaking or speed dating or things like that, where theaters and playwrights are kind of having conversations, reading each other's work, getting to know each other, and seeing what might be a fruitful partnership or co-application. We have, as I mentioned, this is our info session we're doing right now. We have another one in January. And you have until February 13th to complete the application. I was speaking with Perone, who I mentioned kind of directs this program a little while ago, and her advice is, if it's possible, to at least get an expression of interest or a plan before the end of this year for a co-application, because then you have all of January to get all of the application together, all your documents together. If you're a playwright and you're used to applying for fellowships and you're used to being able to start it the day before the deadline and then kind of slide it in, which I know a lot of us do, when you're working with a theater organization, things often move a little bit more slowly and you need sign off from more and more people versus if you were just applying for something by yourself. And so that's one of the reasons that we really recommend before the end of this calendar year. It would be really helpful if you had a plan or a partner or at least, a strong conversation with an institution, because then you have that full month when you come back from the new year to really get the documentation together. I would hate to see somebody miss out on this opportunity because they underestimated how much time it takes for example, a development department, a grant writing department to sign off on the parts of this application. Let's see, applying theater have to be US based. Yes. Yep. All of the theaters need to be based in the United States, including any co-applications between multiple theaters. Every theater in a sort of partnership each needs to be eligible on their own, if that makes sense. So those guidelines that I shared have to apply to each institution that's applying together. Thank you for the question. So the application is due in February. Fabulous. We will be taking you through what that looks like somewhat briskly. Then what happens is after all of our applications are received, they are sent to a first round of evaluators or readers. Now, who are these people? They are not Playwright Center staff. They are often staff at other theaters, whether that's literary staff, artistic directors, associates, dramaturgs, directors, both freelance and affiliated with institutions.
Hidden preview. Okay.
I'm going to just quickly mute you, Kristen. Thank you so much. They are also other writers, previous Playwrights Center Fellows, other writers with other experience in the field, sometimes educators, but they're all theater professionals who we're specifically inviting into this process. And they will read, every application will be read by at least 2 different people. They will read a group of applications. They will give numerical scores along with in-depth comments. And based on both of those things, we will be narrowing the pool down to a group of finalists. You will be notified at that point in April, whether you have become a finalist or if you have not been selected this time. If you have become a finalist, there is one additional step that will be added for theaters who become finalists. And so basically you'll get an email from me saying, congratulations, you're a finalist for this program. Here is some paperwork to sign that basically says, I acknowledge I'm a finalist. If I am selected, I am still committed to producing this play. And this is the thing that needs to be signed in order for, if you are selected at the end of the day, to move things forward with the fund and the subsidy. We will also be asking theaters to provide a letter of recommendation from a playwright who they have worked with in the past, whose work they have produced. We will give you, a set of weeks to do that. We will send you all of the details that you need. But it is something to kind of be percolating on as we go through the spring, who you might ask should you become a finalist. And the reason we've added this year is to sort of get the perspective of a writer on how your theater handles new work and how your theater collaborates with a playwright. Because as we mentioned at the beginning, one of the big values of this program is to have that process-based, artist-centered collaboration. And so we hope that there are writers who you've worked with in the past who can speak to that, who had a great experience and who can kind of let the panel know that this is a theater that really will, deliver on their promises, and it will be a healthy and fruitful collaboration with a new writer. As we get closer, feel free to ask me questions about that. There will be a lot more details provided to folks who become finalists who are asked for that. So then the finalist pool, all of their application materials, including this new letter, will go to a final selection panel, which is 5 people, and it's a mix of playwrights and producers, and folks who we know to be particularly interested in and experienced with Venturous style of work. Those folks will read all of the finalists. They will have a long, in-depth, knockdown, drag-out conversation. And then at the end of that conversation, we will have the fellows selected. And Nicole or Perone will be making phone calls and letting people know that they are the new group of fellows. When we announce, hey, here are our new Venturous Fellows, hooray, hurrah, we will also be sharing the full list of nominees publicly. We will not be including the scripts at that stage because, again, that's not meant to go to the whole world, but the list itself will go to the whole world. Nominees will have an opportunity to update their bios, their synopses, things like that. But we really want that to be a boost for everyone who was nominated. And then at that point, I will put kind of a bit of information saying, if you would like to read these plays, reach out to me. This happens a lot. It still has been happening, even though it was over a year and a half ago now that we last publicized last time's list. But people reach out to me and I will say, hey, Nicole, so-and-so from this theater is really interested in your play. Feel free to send it to them at your leisure. And one of the reasons we do that is, as I mentioned, the Venturous Fund is really invested in moving plays into production in whatever way possible. This fellowship is one way to do that, but we also hope that there will be a lot of kind of subsidiary benefits of being a nominee, having this sort of publicity and people knowing about your work and being able to learn about your work, as well as theaters having this opportunity to really read a lot of different plays and start conversations with a lot of exciting playwrights. There are a number of theater and playwright partners who did not receive the fellowship last cycle, but who have still moved forward with a production or with a development process or moved the conversation along. And that's something that is wonderful and is one of the intentions of the program. And so I hope that as you're talking together about potential partnerships, you're also considering perhaps, even if we aren't selected, maybe this is a relationship that can continue in the future. So now getting into the application. I'm not going to take you through step by step of this page because I'm about to show you the full application in our slide room platform. But as you're prepping for your application, you can kind of see all of the details here. So you can get things together before you actually start applying. I'm going to start by showing the theater application because it's kind of the most different from all of our other programs and it has some specific needs. So what I'm going to do is scroll down past these details to this click here to access the theater application. And now this is taking us to a different platform. This is a platform called Slide Room. We use this for all of our fellowships. So if you've applied for things here before, you will probably recognize it. You can see here you're on the right page because it says Venturous Playwright Fellowship -theater. Here are all of those guidelines and details we just went over, as well as a preview of the application again. What you'll need to do if you are a theater applying is pick one person. And if you're applying as a group of theaters together, still pick one person who is your main representative, who's the main contact. That just saves all of us a lot of time of having to chase down, 7 different people at 4 different theaters. Have one person who's kind of in charge of the application and of the central communication. If you are if you're a representative of a theater and you have applied for fellowships as an individual, I would highly recommend that you still make a separate account. And the reason for that is I have specific naming conventions that I would love you to follow that I'm going to show you in just a second. And what that basically does is allows us to organize, this is a playwright application, this is the corresponding theater. We are looking at them and evaluating them together. It's kind of a little trick that I've had to create because this application platform does not allow for one application that's being worked on by 6, 7 different people at the same time. So what I'm going to do, say I'm a theater representative, which I am, I work at Playwrights Center. I will click this sign up button here in the corner and I will pick the email address of the main person, of the central contact that you want to use for this. And I'm going to use just a Gmail address that I have because I use all my addresses for these sample applications and I'm running out of them. And now I will make a password. Again, if you want to share the password so that multiple people have access to it, feel free. But we'll kind of use the one main email address. And then I will click sign up. Okay. Great. Try that password. Hey, so now it's sent me an activation link to my email. So I'm going to quickly hop over to my email and see a slide room support. Great. This means if I click on this link, I have an account. Wonderful. So I'll continue to log in, use that password I just created because I can remember things. Wonderful. So now that I'm all logged in, I have a brand new shiny slide room account. The first thing I'm going to want to do is put a name on my account. So up here in the corner, you'll see my email address pops up, but not my name because I haven't told Slide Room what that is yet. So I'm going to click on this and click account information. This is where I will create my profile. Now you'll see here, I'm going to hop right back to our Venturous page where we have all of the application details. This is the naming convention that I'm going to ask you to follow, again, so that we can organize these applications. So the first name is my theater name. I'm going to say it's the Globe Theater. I'm going to pretend I work there. The last name, we'd love the last name of the playwright you are applying with. So let's say William Shakespeare was nominated for this program, and I'm applying, I work at the Globe, I'm applying with Shakespeare. This is going to be super helpful so that I can make sure when these external evaluators are reading your work that they are putting the correct, 2 and 2 together, and that there aren't issues and confusion on that front. So now I'll ask for the address. If you have multiple theaters, if it was the Globe, also with Playwrights Center, I might do a dash here and list them all. If it's something where your relationship is one theater is going to be the main sort of host for this premiere and the main driving force behind the partnership, you may want to choose just one name. It all depends on kind of the relationship that you've worked out between you as partners on how you want to list it. But the most important thing is first name is for theaters, last name is for playwright. So then I'll put in my address. It's important that this address be a US address. If I see an application from a theater that has a non-US address, I'll be emailing you and saying, hey, can you explain where you're based? Things like that, so I can make sure that you are eligible. I'm going to say Minneapolis, Minnesota. Phone number, again, I would pick kind of your main contact person, the person who, if I see, whoa, there's something really weird happening with your application, I can call that person and talk them through how to fix it. So now I will save my changes. It's saved, and you'll see my name just popped up here, Globe Theater PWC Shakespeare. Fabulous. Now I'm going to click back to Playwright Center right here, and you can see a directory of every single program that we have on the Slide Room platform. So I'm going to go all the way down to the bottom, Venturous-Theater. That is the one I want. Now you'll see I'm logged in here at the top. In Slide Room, blue is what I like to call an active color. If something is blue, it means you can click on it. So I'm going to click Begin Application. This is going to be basic information. Again, if there are multiple theaters, please list all of them. The primary contact person that you want us to get in touch with, their phone number, their email address. This doesn't really matter, but I'm just showing you the mailing address for each theater that is applying. So I would put the Globe, their address, Playwrights Center, their address. Again, this is so I can check the eligibility of each of the partners. Then the last name of the partner playwright. Again, this has to be somebody from the nomination list and somebody who you've spoken to about this partnership. You don't want to surprise someone and say, hey, I applied with your name and your play, if you haven't spoken to them before. That person's email address and their phone number, the title of the nominated play. That is just so I can be sure that, yes, this theater is intending to apply with this person and this play. If the title has changed, and this is a note for playwrights, if you have changed your title since you were nominated this summer, please just drop me a line so I know. Because if I see a title that's not familiar, that's not on the nomination list, I'll probably be emailing and saying, hey, this play wasn't what was nominated. Do you need to redo your application? So if you've changed the title, just let me know, because then I won't bother people. Next, we're asking about eligibility. So this is, again, all of those guidelines that we went through, and this is your ability to kind of confirm that, yes, you've read through this, yes, you're eligible, all of that. So I'll say, yes, I am eligible. Do you agree to produce the world premiere of the nominated play? Yes. If you don't, there's no point in applying. And then, was this information true and correct? Yes. So I will click Save Changes. You'll see it does also auto save. So it's up to you if you need to re-click that. Then to move on, I will either click continue to the next step here or next up here. You'll see we're on step 2, attachments. Attachments is the main part of any application. You'll see a note here about how evaluators weigh the materials. So 60% will be based of the score will be based on the theater's ability and commitment to produce this specific play. 40% of the score will be based on the impact of the play, as we kind of talk about it below. The impact of the play on the theater's community, kind of the suitability of this specific play and playwright to this specific theater. There's a note here that the primary language that we use is English. You are more than welcome to include other languages, but just know that we cannot guarantee that a person evaluating your application has facility in a language other than English. The first thing that we're asking for is a playwright match statement. So this is really kind of one of the biggest parts of this application. This is your chance to talk about why you want to produce this play, why you want to work with this playwright, why your theater is a good match for this specific piece. So maybe you want to talk about the geography of your theater, who is in your community, whether that's, demographically, whether that's artistically, aesthetically, historically, the resources that you have as a theater that might align well with the needs of the play, individual collaborators that you work with or that are on your staff that you think, oh my gosh, this director is going to be perfect, or we have this incredible set designer in our community who could really bring this stage direction to life. The mission statement of your theater, I think, is a key thing to include if that's aligning with what feels like the mission statement of the play. And also thinking about the content, the themes, the aesthetic, what makes the play itself venturous, and why you're excited about supporting those aspects of the play. We are asking for all of this in one page. So I definitely recommend taking a little bit of time to work on this in partnership. If you have multiple theaters, do talk about that partnership, why all of you are invested in this play and why it's a good match for a co-production. Everything that we are asking for is PDF format, just because that allows us to actually open it. Unfortunately, in Slide Room, if it will let you upload non-PDFs, but then I can't open them and no one can open them on the back end. So if you upload a Word document or a JPEG or anything like that, you're going to get an email from me saying, hey, I need you to redo this. So better to just make sure it's a PDF on the front end. You'll see that it's processing, it's thinking about being attached, and as soon as it's ready, a little box will pop up that tells me it has attached. If I realize, oh gosh, this was not the right statement, I've uploaded the wrong document, all I have to do is click this little trash can. It'll get rid of my last document and I can re-upload. So here I see a little preview. Yes, this looks like the document I want. Next, I move on to a sample budget. You'll see that we ask for a sample budget from Theater 1. So if you are one theater applying on your own, you only have to fill out this. Down at the bottom, you'll see if there are multiple theaters, you can each submit your sample budget. So if say I'm the representative applying for a co-producing team of theaters, I would ask for each of the theaters to send me their sample budget so I can submit it for them. But there's only one required because some of you will be applying just as one theater. So we are asking for the production budget of a play that you have produced in the last 3 years, ideally a play that's comparable in size to the nominated play. You can make this annotated. I highly recommend adding some notes, particularly if this sample budget is much different in terms of scope than the nominated play, a little bit about how you plan to achieve the production of the nominated play, and just anything else that you need us to know about how this budget worked and how you are thinking about the production of the play you're applying with. Nicole, could you give us a little bit of insight as a producer, kind of how to choose this budget or what information would be really helpful in this stage?
Sure. And just to say, like, you know, the sample budget doesn't have to be sort of the most detailed budget that you've ever done, but what we're trying to see is how does your theater budget your resources for a new play that's comparable, right? So if I had a sample budget and the director is on staff and the director budget is 0, that helps us understand what your assumptions and expectations are around how you produce, so then if you're paired with a playwright who's hoping to work with a director and you agree to that, is the Venturous Fund going to help support bringing in that director from out of town? It lets us see how you pay your artists, suppose you send a sample budget for a 4-person cast and the Venturous play that you're picking has an 8-person cast, then we know that like the conversation is about how to double that portion of the budget. So really the sample budget is about picking a sort of new play that feels comparable to scale. I would say it's like the sample budget that you would scale up or expand in order to do the production that you're applying for. Now, if you have a sample budget for a play that is the Venturous play that you've done in the past, that's also great to know. We're operating under the assumption that the Venturous Fund is helping to sort of enhance what you're already doing. Which is why we say, what is a comparable budget that you can sort of scale up or we can use to consider how the funds might be used to help support the work that you're doing. And it just helps us understand, are all of your artists local? Do you have an out-of-town budget? Do you need housing? What are the material budgets? Things like that. So yeah, I'm happy to sort of answer any questions that you might have, but that's what I'll say about the budget. I mean, we're also just trying to avoid an idea that like the Venturous Fund is your budget, right? It is part of a budget.
Awesome. Thank you so much. The next part is really in conversation with the other two parts. And we always say for applications, all of these attachments are in conversation with each other. So this is a production subsidy proposal. So basically exactly what Nicole set up. How are you going to scale up or scale laterally or whatever the scale is? How are you imagining that you would use the production subsidy and what would it allow you to do? Maybe that's materials, maybe that's personnel, maybe it's casting or particular artist care. What is it about this play that may be a little beyond your current capacity that the production subsidy would then allow you to bridge that gap? Again, this is one page, and I think a successful version of this makes a lot of sense with your theater match statement. So if you think of the match as, let's assume that this is going to work and you can afford it and all of those things. Why this play? Why this theater? And then the production subsidy is how I imagine us getting there, if that makes sense. Then we're asking for proof of 501c3 status. So this can be a not-for-profit letter, a 990, another tax document, some way, again, that we can double check eligibility and make sure that everyone is eligible. If you have multiple theaters that are applying together, just write to me and I can make sure that we have space. I actually will probably go in and add a couple of more spaces to upload more 501c3 proof. And then those are our attachments. So that's really the hard part of the application. Now we'll go on to the final page. Once you submit your application, you cannot go back and make any changes. However, if you need to at some point before the application deadline, you realize, oh, I need to update this or that, or something wasn't correct, just write to me. I can unsubmit your application so you can make those edits and resubmit. That does all need to happen before the application deadline. Once the deadline has passed, I cannot make any changes to any applications because it will be already in evaluator land and from whence nothing can return. I talked a little bit about how this is all going to work. I screen things for eligibility. Again, Playwright Center staff are not involved in the selection decision. So Nicole, Perone, and myself facilitate the process. We sort of do the administration side of things, but we do not express opinions about specific plays or specific theaters. We are not actively involved in the final conversation about who is being selected. We are just really excited about all of you and every applicant. And then the panel tells us, hey, this is who you're supporting for the next 2 years. Now it says I'm ready to submit. If I want, I can review the application and see exactly what all I uploaded and how I answered the questions. I can print it at this point if I would like, but I'm just going to click submit application. Boom. Very exciting. It's done. I get the happy green check mark, which means everything was received. You'll see there is a confirmation number here. You can save it if you want. I know some people feel like nice and reassured by numbers, but if I don't need that number. So if you need me to look up your application, just give me your name. I'll be able to find it. Again, you can print this confirmation page. You can print a copy of the whole application, and you'll see again, you'll be hearing from us by the end of April about whether or not you are moving on to the next round. So this is the theater application. I'm going to go through, and pardon for talking so fast, but I'm going to go through the theater application really quickly. So I'm going to log out as a theater, and I'm going to change my entire personality and become a playwright. Hooray. So going up here back to our venturoustheaterfellowship.org page, you'll see playwright application materials. And this is the button, playwright application. Be sure when you are submitting your side of the application, you are paying attention to if it's the playwright or the theater application. So now I click the playwright application, and I am going to, again, if I've never applied for anything before in SlideRoom, I'll click sign up and go through that same process. I will just use my name. As a playwright, we are just looking for your individual information. You do not need to put theater contact information in your SlideRoom account or anything like that. You can just make it as yourself. And if you also apply for Core Writer or McKnight or Jerome, anything else, you may already have an account. One thing to notice, you'll see a Playwright Center's logo here in the corner, but this is not the Playwright Center website. So if you are a member of Playwright Center and are used to logging in to look at the opportunities database or manage your profile, this is a completely separate platform and a completely separate website. So your password and login as a member will not necessarily work here. So you may need to make a new account. But I'm going to put in my Playwright account and log in. Great. My name has popped up. That means I'm good to go. I'm double checking again. This is the Playwright application. And I'm not going to take you through word for word because you can read. And if you have questions, email me or call me at any point. It's going to make me wait because I've been making it do a lot of work. But you'll see that there's a lot of similarities between this application and perhaps other applications that you've submitted. So we're asking for again, this is for your primary phone number, your mailing address. Pronouns are optional, but just so that you know, throughout the evaluation and selection process, we and our evaluators and our panelists are talking about you and your work. And so we ask for pronouns so we can do that accurately, but totally optional if you'd like to provide that or not. Now we're asking for just the names of your partner theaters. So I'll say I'm going with the Globe and Playwright Center. Then who is your main contact over there? The reason I'm asking for this on the playwright side of things is if I get an application from Nicole and Nicole says, I'm applying with the Globe, and then I don't have an application from the Globe at all, or I don't have anything from the Globe, this allows me to get in touch with them and say, hey, Nicole thinks that she's applying with you. Do you have an application coming in? What's up here? So I'll say Bob Jones, email, phone number. Again, just one person. Who's the main person that you're communicating with? Now, the title of the nominated play, again, you may only apply with that nominated play. And if the title is changed, let me know. Questions about eligibility. Applicants must have the legal right to work in the United States and currently reside in the United States. This does not mean you have to be a citizen, but we have to pay you $60,000 in a way that the IRS will not come after us. So whatever that means for you, we'll just make sure that that is true for the purposes of the application. So I'll say, I am eligible to apply. This is my information. Save changes. In the interest of time, I am not going to take us through every single step of this demographic form. You can watch any of the info sessions from our other fellowships if you would like me to take you through step by step what that looks like, or feel free to reach out to me with questions. There's a lot of context given here about why we ask these questions and how we ask them. But if I've applied for another program, I can actually copy my answers from that previous application. So it saves me a little bit of time if nothing has changed about my identity markers or how I would answer these questions. So again, pardon for rushing past, but I'm trying to kind of get through this as close to an hour as possible. So now that my forms are filled out, I will click the next button. Again, the attachments, and you'll see there's a slightly different weighting happening because the evaluation for the playwright side is slightly different. So the script itself is weighted 60%. The match with the theater from your perspective is weighted 30%. And the impact of the fellowship, what the fellowship will allow you to do as a writer and as an artist, is 10%. So the first thing we're asking for is a 1 to 2 page resume. Again, this needs to be a PDF. This can be in any format you would like. It really doesn't matter as long as it's legible. And in terms of what you can include, totally up to you if you want to keep it just your playwriting work, your other artistic work, your scholarly work. I would just think about what's the overall story that you're telling with your application and what parts of your experience are most relevant to that. Now we're asking for an artist statement. So we're asking you to talk about your play and also contextualize it within your vision, your body of work, where you are in your career and where you've come from. This is also a chance to talk about your goals for the world premiere production, how this fits into your overall career trajectory, and how being a Venturous Fellow would help you reach the goals that you have for your craft, development, career, etc. So this is really about you specifically, you and this play, you and your relationship to this specific play. And I highlight that because the next thing we're asking for is the theater match statement. So this is your chance to talk about, you've already said, this is who I am, my work, why I do what I do, how I do what I do, how this play fits in, and my goals for that. Now it's time to talk about why your partner theater or theaters is the right match. Again, it's basically your perspective on this. As you saw, the theater provides their own perspective. So again, maybe it's geography, the community, the resources, the mission statement, all of that kind of stuff. But it's really important to us that we get your perspective on this as well, because this is meant to be, kind of an equal collaboration. Can you talk more about what's meant in artist statement about impact on development, where the fellowship can take you? Yeah, that's a great question. So when talking about kind of what the impact of the fellowship could be on you, it's about sort of where you want to go next with your work. And that can be solely based on career, like this will give me the opportunity to, having had a production, at X size of theater, I have other pieces that are raring to go, and I'm really interested in having future collaborations similar to this one. It may be my craft, how I want my craft to develop. And do remember that as a playwright, you're not just getting a production, you're getting 2 years of pretty intensive fellowship, including a lot of development funds. So this might be a place to say, here's where this play is, you know, my play 12th night, and I really want to work on this part of the play, and having those extensive development funds is going to allow me to go to Playwright Center and really, you know, work on those aspects. Or maybe I'll work on 12th night one year and I'm really excited to work on Hamlet the next year. Here's why I'm pumped about Hamlet. You know, it's really a chance to say, this is not just, I'm not just applying for a production. I'm applying to engage as a fellow. I'm applying to develop as an artist. And so the evaluators want to hear about kind of how you imagine this fellowship taking you to where you want to go, or helping you on that path towards where you want your work to go. Maybe the impact you want to have on the field, maybe the impact you want to have on the country. Maybe like, hey, this is my first time really digging into play with music, or a horror play, or a play based on archival research, and having this extra support and this significant financial support is really going to, you know, take me where I need to go. I hope that kind of answers the question. I do want to also mention that we just taught a class on writing successful artist statements just earlier this week. If you're interested in getting the materials from that class, please drop me a line. I will share that with you. We're also going to have another session on that topic in January. So now the play. I don't need to tell you stuff about the play because you don't get to pick what play you're submitting. It's the same one. It can absolutely be updated. It does not need to be the same draft. And honestly, if you're updating your draft throughout this entire process up until the application deadline, let me know, because I'll put updated drafts on that website for theaters to look at. So just so you know about that. Now our attachments are done. We're great. I'm going to just swing us through the submission page because it looks pretty much identical. We'll submit the application. Happy green check mark. Everything is good. The one thing that's added here for playwrights is if you are not a current member of Playwright Center, we'd love to give you a free trial. If you are applying for a fellowship, you probably will find some of our membership resources useful. And so this is just how you can set that up with Hannah, who's our membership director. And then that's all she wrote. That's the application. You've done a great job. And now we wait and see what happens. So I'm going to stop the screen share. I want to thank you so much for putting up with my very fast language as we try to keep this to as close to an hour as possible. But I'd love to open up right now to any questions that anyone has, whether in the chat or verbally or on video. And also, Nicole, if you have advice or wisdom or other things that I missed or that you want to add and make sure that people know as they're starting to think about this co-application.
No, Julia, that was marvelous. I just would say to all of you, we look forward to the applications. We're really excited by this fellowship that allows us to both support sort of artistically ambitious work by playwrights and the theaters that want to support that work. So we're here if you need us, and we just can't wait to see the applications and hear what you all are up to. So thank you so much. Be brave.
Yes, yes. Question, do you think we should show our theater match statement work in conjunction? That's a great question. I think it's always great when you're working on something together to share that information so that you know you're in alignment. Because if your theater is saying like, you know, oh, I'm really excited to do this production in our proscenium theater, and you say, oh, this would be perfect for their thrust theater, then your evaluators are going to say, oh, I don't think they talked about this. I'm not sure about this partnership. I'm not sure they're on the same page. So that's a great piece of advice, Laura, to definitely kind of know what each other are doing, and how you don't necessarily need to, I wouldn't necessarily copy and paste text, if that makes sense, because know that the same person is reading both applications, but referring to what the other is talking about, I imagine can only make it stronger and make it really seem like y'all have talked about it and no one is going to get the rug pulled out from under them if they are selected. Thank you for that question. That's a really great question. Awesome. Well, I am going to drop in the chat, first of all, my email address. I'm a great first point of contact for questions, advice, problems, anything you need. Perone, Yusuf Zada, as I mentioned, has been having some one-on-one conversations with playwrights to help strategize finding a theater partner, and also is more than happy to speak to representatives from theaters as well about how to approach this application. If you would like to find a time to speak with her, feel free to email me and I will get something on her calendar and kind of coordinate that for you. So do reach out anytime for that. And I can also tell you if something's a Perone question or a Julia question, so that you can get the right information as quickly as possible. The last thing I'll just say is, particularly for playwrights, we have a number of other fellowship programs that you may or may not know about. If you're eligible for this program, I know you're at least eligible for one of the other ones. All of our applications are free, and so if you have the time and you're interested, definitely do take a look at our other programs and feel free to apply and reach out to me with any questions. So I'm going to stop our recording right now.